Hello my friends, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge, where many of you come to get your daily dose of satisfaction by listening to other people get what they deserve. Guys, in this episode, I've got 3 incredible revenge stories. The first story, you'll hear about a package-stealing neighbor who's more trouble than he is. The second story, a store manager who gets revenge on the owners and upper management for firing him. The last story, how to deal with annoying, loud roommates. I hope you stay for the stories today and subscribe for future videos. Let's get into it. This first story is titled, Take My Mail? I'll help the state take your kid. It all started about 4 months ago while I was living in a duplex in a rundown part of the city where I used to live. I had been living in this duplex for about a year and a half, and even though it wasn't a good part of the city, no one really bothered us, and our neighbors were pretty normal, so I didn't really mind it. At least, not until my old neighbors moved out, and Satan's minions moved in. I knew from the moment I first met them that there was going to be an issue. There were 5 of them altogether. 3 guys, 1 baby, and 1 girl. And these were only 1-bedroom places. I tried my best not to judge, so I went over while they were moving to say hello and welcome them to the area. I walked over and said, "Hi, how's it going? I guess you guys are my new neighbors, huh?" All 5 of them at the exact same time stopped what they were doing and stared at me. The oldest of the bunch was a guy, and I extended my hand out to shake his, and he just looked at my hand and then looked up at me and said, "What do you want, kid?" I replied, "Just to welcome you guys to the area. Sorry to bother you." He just stared at me, so I started to walk off, and as I did, I looked back and said, "Lift with your knees, not your back," just to be an ass. That was the only contact I had with them for the next 2 weeks. This is when stuff started going missing. I had ordered a very expensive pair of headphones for my music hobby, and my girlfriend had some expensive makeup that seemed to have just disappeared. The order said delivered, but the stuff was nowhere to be found. So I did the logical thing and knocked on the door right next to mine. The guy answered almost before my fist left the door, and he stared me down with a crazy look in his eye. He said nothing for a solid 8 seconds, so I said, "Hey, I'm missing some mail, and I was wondering if maybe you guys had picked up some packages by mistake." He continues to stare at me, and I notice white powder peeking from one of his nostrils, and I suddenly get a better idea of who this guy is. He then snorts really loud, spits on the porch in front of me and says, "No, but what if I did? What does that mean?" At this point, I'm frustrated and say, "You realize that mail theft is a federal crime, right?" He immediately gets in my face and says, "Anything coming to my house belongs to me, and if you want something of mine, then you're gonna have to pay for it." It all becomes very clear to me now. This guy is your typical trailer trash addict tough guy. So I continue to look him in his bloodshot and bruised eyes and say, "Look, if you have my stuff, I will find out. Don't say I didn't try to negotiate with you." I then went to my local sporting goods store and purchased a wild game camera. I set it up on the tree in our shared front yard while they were gone and ordered some stuff on Amazon to bait the trap. Sure enough, I had video of them not only taking my mail, but performing 4 coke deals on my goddamn porch, pretending that my property was where they lived. At this point, I'm pissed, but I'm a reasonable guy, so I try to go over to work this out without the help of the law. I knock on the door, and I'm greeted by the same crazy-eyed guy and the same bloodshot stare as before. This time, he greets me with, "You want to buy something, or do I need to get my guys to throw you off my property?" I almost walked away right there, but I was keeping it together because I had the power and I wanted to gloat. I replied, "Look, I know what you do for a living, and I know that you have my mail. I just want my stuff back, and I don't want any more deals going on around my house, or I'll call the police." He gets furious immediately and starts to yell at me that it's his house and his town, and if I try anything, him and his boys will mess me up so bad they won't be able to identify me when they find me in a ditch. I just smiled the biggest smile of my entire life and replied, "Okay, see you later, man," and walked away. You see, after the first time of talking to the guy, I decided that I was going to record our conversations with my phone just to get any extra evidence in case I had to turn it all over to the police, and I had just recorded him giving me a death threat. I called the cops, gave them all of the video footage of the mail theft and the deals going on my porch, and the audio of him threatening me. Luckily, this happened to be a one-party state, so all of the evidence could be used in court. Him and his cohorts were all arrested, their kid was taken by Child Protective Services, and I just watched from my front window with the most accomplished feeling probably ever in my entire life. I haven't gotten my stuff back yet though, and I still have to testify in court. OP did the right thing, and the child definitely deserves better. I'm kind of worried about his safety though. Hopefully nobody comes back and tries to get revenge for their dealer being taken off the streets, because that stuff happens, guys. This next story is titled, I, as a former store manager, deliberately hired a thief as my replacement. I was recently let go of my job as a store manager. The company I worked for was horrendous to both me and my staff. Some examples would be the owners and upper management coming to the store and chasing the staff around while snapping their fingers and saying, "You're not working hard enough, go, go, go." Coming to the store and telling me how fat ex-employee is, spreading rumors about the staff and screaming at us over the phone loud enough that the customers could hear it. A month or so before I was let go, I had a pay dispute wherein I explained bluntly, but professionally, how they needed to pay me because it's the right thing to do. They had promised extra pay above my salary for working hours I shouldn't have because of something they did, and then purposely did not pay me that money. Eventually they paid me out, but they really didn't like that I stood up for myself, and thus started their plan to get rid of me. One of them even stopped speaking to me altogether. After this, I was strangely given permission to hire a staff for the store. I needed one, so I happily posted an ad online and started interviewing people. It took a month, but I finally found one I liked and called their references, which came back average but good enough. A sales rep that I knew saw the resume on my desk and told me that I should call X business, which was not on the resume. I did, and it turned out this person had been fired for theft of money and product in the same industry which I'm hiring for. I decided not to hire the thief. After a few days of deciding against the thief, I was sent a resume from the owner that had stopped speaking to me. It was instructing me to interview the thief that I decided against. But how did this owner get the thief's resume in their inbox? The ad was mine, and responses were sent only to my email, and only I had the password to the account. I followed the link back to an ad that I didn't write and posted from a different account. This ad was for a store manager. A poor attempt at being sneaky. I could have quit right then, but I had a better idea. The owners are notoriously spiteful, but I know they're also lazy and don't do their due diligence. They think they're having me hire my own replacement without me knowing. So, I hired the thief as my employee while the owners, having already seen the thief's resume, sees them as a good fit for store manager. I vouched for the thief's references, knowing they'd never call themselves. 3 weeks later, I was let go when I arrived at my store. The owner seemed confused by the big smile on my face when they told me. I was genuinely happy to be finished there. It was the worst employment experience of my life, but it was a job of necessity. I was able to collect employment insurance, thankfully. The thief took over managing the store. And thanks to the new store hours, the thief works 5 days a week with no staff, open to close, unsupervised. Hopefully the upper management treats the new manager a little bit nicer. They may lose thousands of dollars of inventory if he starts feeling a little spiteful. I wonder how much stuff he got away with at his last job before he was caught. This last story is titled, How to Train Your Roommate. This is the story of how I used Pavlovian conditioning to train my formerly obnoxious roommate to behave like a responsible adult. So the three of us are nurses, and we live in this company-provided apartment. Each of us has his own room, which is joined by this common area that doubles as the kitchen and dining area. But the walls are paper thin and don't provide enough soundproofing. I tell you this because if someone were to have loud conversations in the common area, it would resonate through all the rooms adjacent. But if you were in your own room talking to somebody, it wouldn't be heard outside. Basically, any sound that you make on the common room could be heard in all of the rooms. Now, this is not a problem during the day, But at night, when everyone's asleep, one of our obnoxious roommates always decides to have his Facebook video calls in the common room using his phone, waking everyone up with his loud conversations. And since we're all nurses, we have to work in shifts. Me and the second roommate work on 12-hour day shifts, while the third, obnoxious one, works 12-hour night shifts, so the third roommate tends to be awake at night. We get good sleep when he's working, but every time he doesn't have to go to work, the two of us tend to be disturbed by his late-night blabbering on his phone. We tried to handle it the adult way by talking to him about it and suggesting that he do his antics inside his own room, since while he was in there, we wouldn't be able to hear his loud conversations, and he wouldn't wake us up at night, especially if we have to go to work in the morning. This worked for a while, but eventually, he went back to his old habits of waking us up at nights again. We were getting so tired of the situation because all we wanted after a long 12-hour shift was to be able to sleep soundly, especially if we have to go to work the next day. Our hallelujah came from an episode of The Office that I just watched, where Jim trained Dwight to crave a breath mint every time he restarted his computer. A light bulb suddenly switched on in my head to use our Wi-Fi to train my noisy roommate. Nobody else knew that I had admin privileges. I'm super techie, and I just happened to be there when the guys installed it, and they gave me the key. I realized that I had access to our Wi-Fi router on my phone, and could turn it on and off on a whim like a god. It was simple. Every time I got woken up by noisy roommate taking his internet calls in the common room, I would turn off the Wi-Fi of the whole house and wait till he goes back to his room before turning it on again. The training took months and countless late nights. After getting woken up at night by said roommate, I would wait for an opportune time, usually while he's in deep conversation with someone, to turn off the Wi-Fi and then wait for him to get annoyed and curse our service provider until he finally gives up and goes to his room. That's the cue for me to turn it back on. The loud late-night calls in the common room became less and less until he no longer took them in the room at all. This translated to silent nights for me and the second roommate, who had to work in the mornings. My method was so effective that he actually thought there was a problem with his phone. Sometime later, he wanted to show me a video of something on his phone, but said that I had to come to his room for him to show me, since there was a problem with his phone and Wi-Fi wouldn't connect in the common room. I was grinning like the devil the whole time. The best revenges are the ones that can't be traced back to the person. I definitely love this one, and even better that OP convinced the roommate to think that their Wi-Fi never works in the common room. Pure genius, OP. And that's it for this episode of r/ProRevenge. If you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I upload videos almost every day. See you guys in the next one.